Willem Dafoe, Gugu Mbatha-Raw, and writer, director, actor, producer, Edward Norton. Well, welcome. Edward, we were briefly talking outside that this was an independent film, that you've worked over a decade trying to get it off the ground, and it is released by Warner Brothers, but it's actually an independent production. Can you tell us about the need for you to make this story?
Yeah, it was. It took a lot of puzzling to figure out how to get together what we needed to get it done, and we did. Someday Netflix will give me $200 million to age my friends backward. I'm sure of it. I'm sure it's in my future. But as of now, I had to get my friends to work for scale and help me make this movie. The cast of this movie literally almost co-financed the movie because literally everyone in the cast deferred everything and did this. It was and we did it in, we had a 46-day schedule, and we went over a day or two. Maybe we had a day or two of reshoots, but yeah, we had to do this in a very disciplined way. And but I think that when you have Dick Pope and shooting the film, and Beth Mickle and Amy Roth, and there's the people you see on the screen who you can. I guess what I'm really trying to say is you can crack the nut. You can make big films without going crazy. And if you have actors who are theater trained actors who understand, have had the experience of having a primary responsibility for the text in a theatrical performance, and who can bring that into a film in the sense that they know they have to come with the entirety of it sort of synthesized and understood so that you can work quickly. And if you have a cinematographer who's shot every Mike Leigh film, including his great period films, on short schedules, and knows how to do this kind of work fast, and you have, you end up with this incredible array of people leveraging their talent against this problem you've created, which is, let's do a big period New York film, for a price and on a tight schedule. It sounds crazy, but then really talented people force multiply with each other, and they figure it out, and it's really thrilling. It was a thrilling way to work.
Willem, one of the powerful things about this film is that although it's set in the 50s, it's a mirror to our own era right now. Corruption, discrimination.
I don't follow. What do you mean? I'm so interested in what people see in a thing, and you never intended.
Were you aware when you were filming it, when you read the script?
When I read the script, yeah, I was aware. In fact, one of the things that attracted to me were the themes, and I liked very much, I like the writing, and I like, for my character, the story he has to tell. But, what gets me there is really Edward, pitching it to me, and knowing it's a passion project, knowing who else is involved. I was on board practically before even reading the script, to tell you the truth. But I like the themes in it, and of course they are resonant.
Gugu, your character is so complicated. I love the fact that she's a lawyer, she's fighting for rights, but she leads him into this whole new world of jazz and music, which brings a whole new dimension to him. Can you tell us about working on your character?
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that really appealed to me, was the fact that Laura was so layered. And I think so often when you see women in movies that are set in the 50s, we're so familiar with the 50s housewife sort of archetype or the femme fatale. And I really love the fact that Laura is educated. She's, she works in activism. She's on a mission. She's got such integrity. And also, selfishly, I love jazz. I grew up playing the saxophone, listening to Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald. So the idea of getting to sort of research Harlem and getting to, be in this world of the jazz club, and the fact that Laura can kind of, straddles these two worlds really of the jazz scene and also her activism. And then I just love the dynamic, working with Edward, and the fact that both characters sort of are outsiders in a sense, and how the jazz sort of is mirrored in his Tourette syndrome, and how she sort of I guess has a really positive influence in his life in sort of challenging him to make a change.
I just also love what an emotional core you are in the film, and I'll never forget your line, we all just need someone to look out for us in the world. That's just very powerful. This is a very odd pairing, the two of you. We've never seen a pairing like this. Ed, were you aware of the dynamic?
Well, I think that... Well, I mean, it depends on the Gugu. I felt like I'm not hip. I'm not like an early adopter. I don't know the great bands usually before other people, but I felt I was very attuned to Gugu's work. I'd seen a lot of it, and I felt like maybe I had this great idea, which was that Laura is a figure of mystery, and I think when an audience is having the same experience as like, let's say, Lionel, that's a great thing, because Lionel wants to know who she is, and if the actress isn't so well known that most of the audience wants to know that she's a mystery to them too, if they want to know more, if when she starts to speak it's a revelation, it's each level is new. There's that certain charge to that discovery, and I think that doesn't, that fades in an actor's career. There's a wonderful moment sometimes with great actors where you really get that initial charge, and I felt like Gugu was like this like secret, like I felt like I could like capture this moment. Where so many people are going to be discovering her talent and her intelligence and all these things, as they are with Laura. And so that was exciting to me. I thought that was very exciting to get to work with someone I had confidence in, but who I knew would be a discovery to others. I think that Laura and Lionel, Gugu already said it, I think they see, Willem says in the film, it's a bad, when people aren't seen for what they really are, this is where it's either dangerous or tragic, and I think that Laura and Lionel and Paul all are unseen, and I think that idea of that they meet, not that that they don't have a chemistry, a romantic chemistry, but they more have the bond of empathy, that they give each other empathy and the feeling of being seen.
Which actually leads me to my next question to Willem, that your character appears to be one thing, but is actually, quite another thing. Was that something fun to tackle?
That was fun because you really don't know who he is right away. You think he's a crank. And then you realize that he holds, the story, that the truth. And his motives are maybe mixed. But I just love this relationship between the brothers, the idea that that they start out together, idealistic, they want to improve things in the world, and then they part ways. They take two different paths, and I think that's really interesting in the respect that I like it when he says he didn't love people enough and he got tired of lesser minds winning. So then the character that Alec Baldwin plays just becomes obsessed with winning. Heard that before? And doesn't, considers, action the ultimate. And there's a forthrightness to making strong actions, and whoever's toes you step on, that's just considered collateral damage. Where I'm on the other side, where I'm still a believer that you got to take care of people, but also it's complex because I also don't want to totally destroy him because he may be able to help me out for my ambitions. So I like also that the film isn't like a total polemic or condemnation of a particular way, but it presents these point of views in a very articulate way. I love Alec's speeches, even at the pool. Obviously, he's a villain, but you take his point of view. You listen to him and you see the logic of it. And that's cool, because when you're watching it, you're thinking, where do I sit with all this? Between the pragmatism and the attraction of someone that makes bold choices and thinks ahead of everyone else, and taking care of people. All that's in the mix, and I think the movie beautifully plays with that and doesn't talk down to you, but presents these stories as something for you to mull over in your head to see what your relationship to some of these themes are.
Gugu, the film, the script, has such a musicality, the language that Edward created. What was it like to work with a script that had that lyricism, that musicality?
Well, for me, it was really a gift as really the only British actor and non-New York-based actor. The language and the script that Edward has written was so rich, and each character that Lionel sort of meets, often has a sort of opening, very meaty monologue, or, certainly when I first meet with Lionel, walking along the street there in Fort Greene, and, it was having viewed Laura, for a long time, and then actually when she actually gets to speak, the writing was so muscular, and I think there was, you always encouraged us to really sort of jump on the pace of that, and and I think there is a really New York energy to a lot of the writing. So for me, working with a dialect as well, it was a real gift to have a script that was so beautifully written.
And Edward, you changed, the novel. You changed the timing. It's set in contemporary, right? And then you switched it to the 50s, and you also changed the plot. Can you tell us about why that was important for you?
Well, I think all credit has to go to Jonathan Lethem for the character of Lionel and this terrific, the core of this orphan, among other orphans, who comes up under this charismatic, boss, and the loss of Minna and the propulsion forward into a mystery is the core of the novel, even though it's set in the 90s. But what Jonathan and I talked a lot. Jonathan's a real he's a deep cinephile. He knows mid-century noir films like better than I do, which is saying something. He really goes deep on the literature and the film history of noir and detective novels and things like that. And you feel that in the book. The book does something I think you can do in a book better than in a film. It has a kind of a surrealism. It's set in the 90s, but it feels like these men who are in a time capsule from the 50s, and the mind can sort of straddle that. But on film, we talked, Jonathan and I, I said I think if you could run the risk of it feeling like the Blues Brothers a little bit, guys in fedoras being funny. And one of the first things I said to him is the primary ambition for Lionel for it to be kind of a running gag? And he said, no. And I said, because I think if we said it in the 50s, it sounds more radical than it is, because the book feels like a book from that era, and I just thought I thought the emotional isolation of the character was not something to be dispensed, thrown away in irony. And he liked that idea. He liked the idea of actually making it a story in that era. And once we did that, the plot in the book, which was not, I don't want to say it wasn't about anything, but it's mostly just a puzzle. It's not there's no social commentary really in the book. It's really a character portrait. And so I talked with him about the idea of well, what if we almost treat the film like the second novel, like Chandler writing multiple Marlowe novels. We were like, what if we treat the film with the core, but we send him off into an adventure that goes into takes a little bit of a wider view of things that happened in New York, and I couldn't have done it. So yes, after Frank's killed, it becomes my story. None of these characters are in the novel. There's no Moses Randolph. There's no story of New York in the 50s or any of that. But I couldn't have done any of that. That liberation was only with a blessing and a green light from Jonathan, who has been amazing, and continued to inform my sense of. Jonathan said something to me once I'll never forget. He said mystery stories before Chandler, he was like, the detective was looking for the one bad person in a room full of good people, and after that he was in a world of bad people looking for the one good person. And I thought that's really true in this story. It's like Lionel really is looking to in the end, the whole thing is driven by his identification of the one person he's ever met that he really thinks is good. And I think that had a big comment had a big effect on in a way what I thought it was about in some sense. So Jonathan's just the best. He's a great writer, and he created this incredible character, and he gave me the blessing to springboard off of the book itself.
So, speaking of noir, we're used to seeing noir detectives that are men of few words, and now you have Lionel who erupts with words. And can you tell us about that dynamic?
Well, when you're pitching it, it's not particularly it doesn't go over great, which is probably why we had to make this independently. Because you sort of say we're going to do a big 50s period noir, like a LA Confidential, but there's a Tourettic, Rain Man, and people's eyes just cross. They're like everything cool about that opening just collapsed into nonsense. And you say I'm going to get Tom York from Radiohead and mash him up with Wynton Marsalis, and the music's going to be great, and people are just call us on the next one. They don't, it's hard for people to wrap their heads around those combos. But I think that I think it's fun. I think sometimes I don't know, noir to me, serious noir, not sort of B movie, cliche, but really good noir has a real function, I think, which it demands, it challenges the mainstream American narrative. It basically says, this is who we say we are, but we're going to peel the corner back, and this detective's going to take us into the shadows, and we're going to see that there are things going on underneath that are very antagonistic to us. We've put the power where we think it's supposed to be, and other people are rigging the game and doing damage. And I think real noir basically says how much of this are we going to tolerate, before we start getting feisty about it. And I think it's very healthy. I think that's actually a healthy tradition of, Chinatown, to me, it's not at all coincidental that Chinatown lands as the Vietnam War is collapsing on our heads and Watergate is exploding, and the delta between, who we've said we are in post-war American life and the way we're behaving is getting very wide, and you get this film about that, that says, California, the sunny land of opportunity, the American dream, it's all built on stolen water, and the people who did it raped their daughters too. So, it's dark. It's a reminder that that power is being amassed in places it's not supposed to be, and damage is being done by those people.
Yes. It's a question to both Gugu and Willem. What was it like working with a director that is performing at the same time and who's actually the writer?
Remember our deal and be kind.
Well, in some ways it really simplified things, because obviously there was only one person to sort of look to for a lot of questions and, about the script or, in the scene. But for me, I loved it. I think it made it so much more intimate in a way, coming from theatre, where you have that moment where, you rehearse and then the director leaves and then the play is in the actor's hands, and I felt like we were all in it together. I mean, obviously, Edward, is incredibly well prepared and really had surrounded himself with an amazing team. But in those scenes, I mean, what was really kind of fun and generous for me is we didn't really rehearse, a lot of the moments when Lionel has those Tourette tics. So so often I didn't always know when they were coming, and in a very generous actor way that I could have a completely authentic reaction on camera because that those weren't directed or in a way. But yeah, it was really fun. It's sort of it's sort of an intense way to work, but I think also a very intuitive way when your director is also an actor, because they know what you're going through. They can empathize. They have the vocabulary to express things, and some things are just sort of unspoken actor code, things that that you feel like you intuit. So yeah, it was an amazing experience.
Willem?
Efficient, fast, light-footed, and also you're not taking a break to go out and check stuff. There's when you aren't breaking the scene to run and look at playback. He's in it, and what else? Just also somehow he can direct by the performance he's giving across from you. He can set the tone for the world, and then you're there with him in it. So it is a question of, being a good partner for him. He can guide you even in how he's performing. So it's fun. It's not hierarchical. There's just us. We're just doing this thing. And he has such authority in how he's guiding it because he's the director, the producer, blah, 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 So it is one-stop shopping. He's the guy to talk to, and he can steer. He can steer even in the scene. It's really kind of fun. It's like a general being on the ground with the troops.
They're being generous. I thought it was a nightmare. No, it wasn't. Fortunately, I listened. Lionel listens to the other characters a lot, and it did actually set up what Willem's saying is true. I did essentially get to watch them. Gugu said it earlier. They as he meets characters, they tend to spend some time revealing themselves to him, and that lent itself. But the thing that's, I can have an efficient conversation with myself. I don't mind directing myself, but I did feel, I do think that actors, filmmaking is very technical. There's all kinds of fragmentation of concentration going on, and there's actually almost everything about the process of filmmaking is designed to mess with good acting. It's an act of will that actors engage in together to pretend that none of that is going on around them. And so that the bubble of suspension of the creation of the illusion is a very definitive act between actors. They help each other. We help each other keep all that at bay. And when one of you is ping-ponging out of that, you're the one doing violence to the concentration that normally we help each other sustain. And that gave me a lot of anxiety. So honestly, it's why I went for the types of actors I did. There's nobody on this that I would call a precious sort of method actor. Like not that they couldn't be, but this was not the production where there was the space for what I would call the precious cultivation of an environment of concentration. You know, I needed like stagecraft professionals who were very, very adept and resilient and capable of dealing with my unorthodox sort of distraction as an actor. And in fact, who are so good that when I had to get back into the space, their groundedness pulled me back into where I wanted to be as an actor. It was almost like they helped me handle the spread of it.
You alluded, and I want to go back to Daniel Pemberton, you know, the jazz score, and you use electronic sound that echoes Lionel's brain, and you know, can you talk about the music composition? And also, you enlisted Wynton Marsalis to play. And actually, I love the dance that you and Laura do, and that's Wynton Marsalis and Tom York.
Yes, that's so the song, the ballad that Tom wrote for the film that you reprises twice, that he sings it. Wynton did a Miles Davis-esque arrangement of it for the club. So some people don't really grasp that's what that is, but it's the same song weaving back in. Partly because I didn't want to distract with a known ballad. If you start hearing Someone to Watch Over Me, you're going to start humming the words to yourself instead of looking at what's going on between Laura and Lionel. And I like this idea of something that your brain goes, wait, I know that. How do I know that? Why do I know that? But you can't really get it because it's still new to you. But you know, Wynton originally I spoke to just about assembling the musicians for the club. So the musicians in the band in the club are the real musicians who played all of that music and some of the score as well. And Wynton is playing the trumpet he's playing the trumpet for Michael K. Williams, who plays our trumpet player, obviously. And originally I asked him just to do that. I thought it was an incredible score just to get Wynton playing the live music with his guys. And but as we went on as Daniel Pemberton wrote this enormous and beautiful score, there were certain moments in it where there's the beautiful theme as he's following Laura, or kind of the lonely theme that sitting in his apartment that comes back after her father's died. All these things. It had such a beautiful horn in it. I asked Wynton if he would look at playing the kind of the big leads in the score, and when he read the score sheets, he was so impressed with it. He actually played the trumpet through the whole score. So all of the lead trumpet through the score is Wynton, and it's amazing. It's like having Babe Ruth come in and hit cleanup for your little league team. It was crazy. But Daniel is one of the most unbelievable talents, I think, working in film music today. He wrote that whole score in like 4 weeks, and he's just a passionate, eclectic. He's a incredible composer. Really, really, one of the more gifted musicians I've ever worked with, and getting Tom to write a song was just like, that was also heaven. It was just great to work with him.
Actually, Gugu, I have to ask you, because I was Amy, the costume designer, I was so conscious of watching the film that the costumes were actually helping to tell the story and create the characters. I loved your emblematic blue coat, that it becomes actually very symbolic. Yeah. Can you tell us about, did that help you, build your character, the costumes, the hair, the Marilyn Monroe?
Absolutely. I mean, Amy Roth is so gifted, and I think actually I realized just the other day, I think the first time that we met, I was wearing a long blue coat, so I don't know if that put something in your brain or Amy's brain about it, but no, I think we very much wanted Laura to feel approachable. The fact that she knocks on people's doors, she travels the subway, she's a working woman, she's not just the glamorized she's not the nightclub singer, she's not that version of that 50s woman. And looking at women who had a law degree education at the time, looking at a lot of photographs, going to my first fitting, the whole room was wallpapered with images. She'd done such deep research into the styles of the time, and starting really from the ground up with the undergarments, I mean, the girdles, the Spanx of the 50s completely change how you walk, as a woman. It really do kind of constrain you. You find yourself walking in a much more dainty, restrained posture. And for me, that really helped. And also just making her not overly glamorized, making sure that she was grounded, I think, and still feminine, but also from a world that is real and as I say, not sort of the fantasy woman in this world. So yeah, it was amazing working with her, and it really, really informed everything.
Amy is kind of designer too, though. When you confront a sequence like someone following someone else, and she comes and says, like, I think we should, she said to me, like, this coat is, there's not much blue in the film. There's very consciously, I think Dick and I, it's got other palettes in it, and Amy kind of cherry-picked the idea that if you're looking at someone from a distance and they're pulling you along through the city, and then because I wanted to do this, shot of a puddle, of the world being upside down in a puddle, Amy was like, the blue coat will help you orient yourself more quickly as you see, when you're a little disoriented by a reflection, the coat, it's like Michael Powell in the red shoes or something, it like pulls you through it. And when a costume designer is not just looking at sort of, well, what's authentic, or, her aunt is the great Anne Roth, the great costume designer, and everything that Gugu's in was out of Anne Roth's private closet. Like, it was like, that's why it's really good stuff. But I do think when someone like a wardrobe designer is thinking on the level of literally how is a sequence going to function, and how can a piece of wardrobe serve the focus in a montage, that's like next level to me.
One last question. I have so much to ask you guys, but we have to wrap it up. The visual world, which is so rich and complex, and I have to ask you about the recreation of 1957 Penn Station, which is long gone. Can you tell us about that?
Well, a couple people have asked me if it was in Budapest. They've asked where that station is, and that was to me a good sign, because it doesn't exist and it's gone. And I think that it's sort of one of those things when you're making a movie with a very limited special effects budget, and your special effects shots are mounting into the many hundreds, just because of the period, and you're shooting it in New York City, so there's a lot of stuff we had to do. I got the fair question, like, why couldn't he find it in a bus station locker? Why does it need to be? Do we really need to build Penn Station digitally? But I really did feel like Penn State. The movie's about law. The movie's about the consequences of not taking care of each other and taking care of our communities in our cities, and Penn Station is the ghost that haunts New York. It is rich communities got destroyed, but Penn Station's sort of the cathedral that New York lost. It's the transcendent space that people literally entered and exited the city, and it had what all great cities had. It had its gateway, and it got lost to backroom deals, and I thought, if you want to, I thought it was worth, on a visceral level, being reminded of what you lose when people like that are operating outside of our view, in a way.
Well, thank you to the three of you. What an honor to have you here.
Thanks, it was a pleasure. Thanks for coming.